We're back with Karen Rowe. And as you know, she is someone who helps you write your book and get it published and get it out there. And I know there are many of you that are listening to this and thinking, oh my gosh, what on earth could I have to say? So I truly believe, of course, I'm a passionate person for women 50 plus, and
Mm.
I can't believe that someone has lived 50 years of their life plus, and not have anything important to disseminate to others. So,
Mhm.
are there any hints that you can give anybody about how they should start thinking about a book, or is there one thing every author needs to do before they start writing?
Well, yes. There's two questions there, so let me address the first one. What's the one thing every author should do before they start writing is figure out who you're writing to. So if you're one of those people that wants to write a book but you're not sure what to write about, sometimes I find what helps is figuring out who you're writing to. So this is, I think, quite easy if you're a business owner, a speaker, or trainer, because you've already, we talk about avatars and target profiles and things like that all the time. But I recommend figuring that out and then really giving some thought about what is the biggest problem that they are dealing with right now. And so that's back to my earlier question about what's the problem that you solve for people. In general, what I think is that people come to books searching for solutions, and you are going to offer that solution. But first, you want to clearly outline what their problem is and in great depth, like think of it as what keeps them up at night. What are they complaining to their friends about? What is their biggest, concern or frustration? What are they mad about? If you can answer those questions, as well as even looking at some of the demographics, what is their age? Are they male or female? What's their profession? What does a typical day for them look like? What are they dealing with? And, what would have them pick the book up? So in my case, as a really simple example, the biggest problem that most people face is that they, they're not sure if the content that they have is any good. The passion that they have for their subject matter doesn't translate onto the page, or as I mentioned earlier, they're just too busy and successful that finding the focus time required to write on a regular basis is a near impossibility. So I'm clear on what those problems are because I did the work in terms of what's the ideal reader, what's going to cause them to come to the book.
You said something about being too busy, and yet I know some of the most prolific people who do write all the time and who do,
Mm-hmm.
manufacture content. They're up at 5 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
and they're in seclusion and they're writing
Yeah.
before they go to work, and before they get the story.
Yeah, or they stay up late at night, and so what I always say is you can make anything work, just be realistic about it. So if you already know that you're not a morning person and you're not going to get up an hour earlier every morning, then don't set yourself up for failure. But if you're a night owl and you find, once the house is quiet and, you like to stay up late, structure your writing around that. If you know yourself to be someone who, and again, over 50, we know what we're like. So if you know that you need, so for me, my first book, I did that seclusion. I went into a cabin in the middle of nowhere. I had no internet. I didn't even have cell phone reception, and I called it my sensory deprivation tank. I needed that because I suffer from, bright, shiny object syndrome. I get bored easily. So I wasn't getting my book done. And so that's what I needed to do. And I was out there for 6 days and I got what I needed to get done in that time before I came home. And it was just a solid base for me. But that's because I know myself that that's what I needed.
That's so funny. So you're one of those cabin people we were talking
Yes,
about.
yes, that's me. And and I know other people that are really good at following a schedule. So if they have time scheduled, they will do it. And if you're that person, then just get it in your calendar, right? Or some people, oh, I just like to have the whole weekend. And other people are like, no, that's impossible with, given my existing commitments. So, that's what I say is start writing for 7 minutes a day. And the first place to start is with an outline. And then if you just follow the outline every day without going back and without, because where we kind of get stuck sometimes is that we start to edit. We're our own worst critics and we start to try and finesse the language. And then, I had a client come to me once who had done that every morning. He started at the beginning of the book. And so the first 50 pages of his book were pristine and immaculate. And the rest of the book just fell apart after that because he kept starting and then he'd get tired at about page 50 or the same spot every day rather than, and then the book just never got done. So just write a first draft, get it down. Don't worry about how it sounds or how you sound or whatever, but just get it down and then you can schedule in time. So what I say is just whatever's going to work, and you know yourself well enough to know what that is, and don't lie to yourself and don't pretend. If you know you're not going to get it done on your own, then that's when you want to bring in a community or support or, whatever that looks like, whether it's a professional, whether it's someone on your staff. I definitely wouldn't recommend it being a spouse or significant other. But, there's lots of writing communities out there that you can reach out to and meetup groups and things where you can have a built-in support community of other people that are working on writing.
So what is the number one question that you get asked by first-time authors?
The number one question I get asked is, should I self-publish or publish with a publisher?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And that has changed in the last 20 years.
Yes.
Because before, if you ever self-published, it was just not a real book. But today, so many people are doing that it's not frowned upon anymore. But where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm a self-publisher, so I promote self-publishing for the simple fact that, you're right, it has completely changed. And I mentioned it earlier, Amazon has been the game changer. So they've completely shifted the power of the publishing house into the hands of the author. So most people can't even tell the difference between a self-published book, if it's done properly, and one done by a publisher. It's now available. You can upload your own book onto Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iBookstore and everywhere where books are sold on your own. And you do have to pay for that. You have to front the costs. However, you have complete editorial control. So you get to say on the content and on the cover and on the title. And typically it's done more quickly. Publishers are notorious for taking anywhere from a year or 2 years just to get the book done. So I recommend self-publishing. And you're gonna spend the money anyways. Like gone are the days where the publisher gives book advances and sends you on book tours. Unless you're Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, who are 1% of the population, that's not going to happen. So, and often now publishers are asking that you do pay them, that you pay a fee to get them edited and things like that, right? So there's really no benefit to doing it that way. So I just recommend going for it. Go for self-publishing. I've had authors and clients who have had publishers approach them, in which case definitely go for it, because they may be able to get you distribution and exposure that you couldn't get without them. But I wouldn't spend your time and resources trying to secure a publisher. I would just spend those time and resources getting your book done, because you can spend as long trying to find a publisher as you could just writing it and publishing it yourself, and then get it working for you to, meet the goals that you set out to meet at the start of the project.
Well, it's interesting. First of all, there aren't as many publishers as there used to be.
Right. Yeah.
There used to be a lot of publishers, but now many of them have gone by the wayside because they really didn't understand the changes themselves, and they didn't know how to market a book.
Right.
They were really glorified printers, and it's just amazing. I think it's just amazing how that's changed. But isn't it interesting how Amazon has changed the game to so many things? They're saying that now, because of buying Whole Foods, it's going to change the whole grocery shopping, and that it's going to really make a difference for companies like Walmart and Costco. and not, and let alone your other chains. So Karen, you said you've been doing this for 10 years. So what did
Mhm.
Karen do before all of this?
I was a middle school French immersion teacher, believe it or not.
Really?
I
Wow.
was. Yeah, and what
Well, no
happened
wonder
is,
you have the patience then to do this, because I mean, as a teacher, you have to have tremendous patience and French immersion. My
yes.
gosh, who who studied that?
Well, I mean, I'm Canadian, so in Canada we have, a mandate because we're a bilingual country. If you ever want to work in the government, that you have to be able to, at least have a working knowledge of both languages. So we have schools where we offer the option to have all the core subjects taught in French for English, Anglophones, right? And they also have schools for Francophones where everything is in French. And so and that's even differentiated between immersion, and early immersion, and core French. So there's all different ways that you can, if that's something in general that parents want their kids to at least have a, working understanding of it, probably similar in the United States to Spanish. And so that's how I started. And I started writing, in my summers. I was traveling every summer, and I started before blogs even. I would send emails to my friends and family about my adventures, traveling. And then when a blogs came out, my friend said to me, "Oh, you should take those emails you send them because they're really fun and entertaining and full of wealth of information, and write on blog." And so I started doing that, and then that evolved from a travel blog to, during the year, I just started blogging about really insignificant, innocuous things like what are my Oscar picks and what's my opinion of Rosie O'Donnell on The View and things like that. And then that just evolved. That ended up being an outlet for me and an expression for me and something that I found I was good at. And I realized, after about 5 years, that I wasn't going to be a lifer as a teacher. So I started to look at, well, what's next for me? And just kind of thought, well, let's try this writing thing and see if it works out. And what I say to people is it could have gone either way. It could have not worked out, but I gave it a go when I still had the time, and was like young enough to just be able to take the risk, basically.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's teaching's loss and the book world's gain. So with everything that we've talked about, what is the most important part to you of the entire book process?
The most important part, well, people are pretty surprised when I tell them this, but I think the most important part of the book is the title. So I said earlier that the cover is the second most important part, but the title, if you don't have a good title, no one is ever going to pick up the book. So you can have the absolute most mind-blowing, phenomenal content, but if your cover and title aren't good, no one's ever going to get to see it. So, that's often something that's overlooked or done at the very end. Everyone focuses on the content, and you should focus on the content, but not at the expense of the title and the cover. Don't overlook that. And for the most part, people make the titles more complicated than they need to, right? People have a split second. So you want to break up the title into two parts. One's a hook, so what's going to grab their attention, and the other is the deliverable. And the deliverable is the subtitle, and that's really just nothing jazzy. What is the book about? And there should be no ambiguity and no confusion, what the book is about. So that's,
Do you suggest getting that title though before they write or after the whole book is done?
well, what I say is that often the title presents itself while you're writing. Definitely start with a working title, and then get feedback from your ideal reader. So, again, why it's important to know who you're writing to. Don't just ask everyone on your Facebook, ask your target reader. And no one gets to have an opinion unless they are your target reader. Because
Oh,
otherwise,
that's
of
a
course,
key. That's a key
yeah,
there.
yeah. And I mean, ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers. So that's why you want to ask specifically your target market, right?
Wow, yeah, that's such a good point, because you're right. 100 people will have 100 different uh, opinions, and what you're trying to appeal to are the people who you're going to be selling this book to. Now, so that brings us to the point. You mentioned something about, business owners having a book. Um, do you think, because I know people who write a book and use it as a business card.
Yeah.
And then I know others that, well, they think they're going to get rich off of a book, which they are
Right.
not. I mean, that's
Right.
not the way to
Yeah.
get rich. It's the way to get known, but it's
Yeah.
not the way to get rich. So, what do you think about writing a book and giving it away? Writing a book, and should it, you still have a value, puts a value on the cover. It's this much, how much it is.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, where do you come on that?
I think you need to decide at the very beginning, along with your ideal reader, what's your end game? Like, how are you going to make money? Because you're right, there's no money in books. Where the money is in the back end, right? Or in how you leverage it to build and grow your business or build and grow your expertise. So you can absolutely use it as a business card depending on what your strategy is. And a book is like any other marketing tool in your business. So you want to treat it as such. Like, what is your plan for it to get you clients? So people that use books as a business card, meaning they may offer it to potential clients or even existing clients that may refer them to new clients. It depends on how much, like you got to know what your cost of goods is and what your cost is of, your client. And I don't necessarily like to speak like that, but if you have, say, $47 packages, then offering your book at no charge may not be a good strategy. If you have high-end packages at $10 and $15 or $25,000 and up, then giving a book away for free is going to be a great return on your investment. So it really just depends what your goals are. Some people want to build and grow their list. Some people want to just establish their expertise and credibility. And I know lots of clients that do like this free plus shipping model because they want to be able to get people's name and email address and get them on their list. So that's all stuff that you want to consider, at the very beginning of the book, along with, of course, what am I going to write about? What's the problem that I solve? Who am I writing to? Who's my target reader? But what is my end game, right? And that should be able to tell you if that's your end game, then this is how you want to get the book in the hands of the readers, right? And that's what I'd say about that.
So, do you help people with their promotion or their marketing plan or their what a hey Karen, what am I going to do with my book now that I have it kind of thing?
Well, I do that from the beginning. Before we ever start, I take my own advice. I do an ideal reader profile with them, which is a 90-minute session. I also do a rapid results outline with them, which takes 20 minutes. We get the book outline done. And then I do a marketing strategy session with them where I ask them, like, what is your end game? What do you want the book to do for you? How are you going to make money and get a return on this investment? Because it costs some dollars to get a book published. So how are you going to get a return on that investment? So I'll strategize with them, but I don't implement and execute that or offer that as a service. What I provide is I can get the book in your hand. And I also feel it my responsibility to let them know that that's only 50% of having a successful book. The other 50% is in their platform and their marketing. So having them aware of that from the beginning, talking about a plan so that they can go and execute and start to implement that plan while we get the book done for them.
So you really, I think that's brilliant. I think that the fact that that's what you do right off the start. I mean, we sit down, we work out the plan, you kind of go over with me who you think it's for, how it should be delivered, what's involved. Do I really even have a message? Do I really have a book?
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, because really, I have read some really pitiful things that people have created, and yet I've also read some really brilliant things. So I think that's a great service that you provide. So what are some of the things that you would say to these women who are listening and thinking, I'm not sure, I don't know, would you suggest they get in touch with you and just have a conversation, and then you would know whether there's something there? Is the pricing something that most people can deal with? I mean, what would you suggest to these women?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they absolutely reach out to me. We can have a conversation. I'm happy to have a 30-minute, initial consultation at no charge for your viewers. Happy to have that conversation. I would much rather people that they be asking these questions from the beginning. The other thing that you don't want to step over is what's your budget. And one of the other things we offer is doing a detailed, book action plan, which is really just a proposal with the scope and the timelines and the cost to get the book to market. And I show that to clients, and sometimes they're like, you know what? It's not worth it to me. Like, given, whatever my other goals are within the business, it's not worth it. And I'm happy if they say that, because I would rather they know from the beginning than, I've had clients come to me that have 3,000 books in their garage collecting dust. They've spent $20,000 and they don't know what to do with all these books, or they've spent 15 and they never got the book done, or, so that's what I would say is absolutely get all the information before you ever even take the first step, because it is a pretty substantial investment, and especially with the marketing, it depends on how you're going to market it. But yeah, it is. And so that's typically a first step with people is I'll have a call with them at no charge for 30 minutes. And then if they're interested, I have a session that I do called the Viability Scorecard, where I do all of the things that I've been talking about in terms of, I can do an ideal reader profile with them. We do a market assessment. We flesh out their idea. I offer them a proposal, and I charge for that. And then, they have all of the information before they ever take the first step. And, we generate a 10 to 12 page report, and then they can really see if their idea has any legs for a minimal investment. And then they also can see clearly how much it would cost to get their book to market and make a decision before they're halfway through and spent thousands of dollars and realized, like, oh man, I don't, I have more to spend and didn't realize it. So.
Well, that's great. Well, I want you to give your contact information again. And so the best way to reach you, give them your website, and then any other way to contact you.
Sure. My website is KarenRowe.com, and we are in the process of revamping that. So it's forwarding right now to nycwriterscamp.com, but don't worry, there's still lots of great info on that site. You can reach me directly by emailing me, Karen@KarenRowe.com. That's KarenRowe.com. And you can always reach out to me on Facebook. I'm at facebook.com/author Karen Rowe. But really, email is the best way to reach me. And if you're interested in that complimentary initial consultation, send me an email and I'll send you a link to my calendar and we can get some time scheduled in right away.
Ah, that sounds wonderful. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous, Karen. I've learned a lot, and I think people listening to you really I must have a lot of confidence in what you have to offer, because you're being very upfront about everything. And I think that what people have learned is, I can do this. I can do this. I may need help in doing this, but I can do this. And you've given some good hints as how to get started and what to look for. And it doesn't have to be a hardcover book, and it doesn't have to be huge. It just needs to be there. So if you want an expert helping you, remember, get in touch with Karen, and that's Karen, Karen. The last name is Rowe, Rowe, and you can email her at Karen@KarenRowe.com. You can go to her website, and so you can find her on Facebook, Twitter. Thanks so much for being with us, Karen. It has been an absolute delight.
Thank you, Dr. Gayle.